Evolution versus creation. When thinking about evolution versus creation, we realize that in the middle of this whole situation is the fact. On one side is the belief structure of the evolutionist, on the other side is the belief structure of the creationist. The fact in this case is the fossil. We know it exists, we know it's in the ground, along with many layers. Now here's the thing, the evolutionists say that this fossil is millions of years old and fossilized, and this is why we find it today. The creationist answer to fossils is that they were buried in the flood 4,400 years ago. They rapidly fossilized, and that's why we find them under layers. Now, we all know fossils can be formed if it's buried rapidly using water. And it is possible that if something is buried in some sort of sap or mud, it can also be fossilized. Now here's a picture of the evolutionists' answer to the fossils and how they came about. This example is using a fish. This is an illustration of what their theory says. Now here's a scientific picture of what would really happen. Because we all know that when something dies, the ecosystem and environment will tear it apart and take care of it. That's what it's for. We all know that cows poop, but the poop is going to stay there unless the flies take care of it and lay their maggot babies inside. Look at that maggot. Isn't it cute? Scrumptious. Other fish and creatures of the sea, and also the sea itself, would decompose a body of a fish. Same thing would happen on land. See, the evolutionary theory forgets the fact that the ecosystem works. Here's an example of the ecosystem. Now here's a picture of the creationists' story of the flood. The mixings of mud, dirt, sand, gravel, rock, and other things like this cover the fish, and the fish is fossilized. This is scientifically possible. And as for the layers in the rock, the evolutionist has no scientific way to explain this, while the creationist does. During the flood, something called hydrologic sorting would have happened because of all these different rocks, mud, sand, and all these other things like that mixing together, and eventually their density sorted out in the waters, and it would have appeared as if they were layers. And just because we find a fossil in the layers does not mean it's a common ancestor of anything. First of all, it's dead. We don't know when it died, or if it even had any kids, because all we know is it's dead. That's the only scientific thing we can say about it. Of course, you could probably say what kind of animal it is. So we find these fossils in the dirt, and people say they are millions of years old, when you clearly look at it, and you can tell by using common sense and science, and, of course, your God-given brain, you can see that when something dies, it's ripped apart and disposed of by the ecosystem. But if something's buried under water and mud with a lot of pressure, it will fossilize. So next time you see the fact of a fossil, you can choose to believe that it's millions of years old, or you can choose to believe that it was buried during the flood. It's your choice.